Today I'm showing you how to build this Gothic Cathedral in ARK Survival Ascended, blending in the Lost Colony structure skin with the vanilla pieces, using mostly the normal gateways and the behemoth gateways as the foundations for our structure, using them as giant pillars as well as some cool arches, and then blending in normal stone painted to look darker with the gunmetal color, as well as painting our greenhouse glass, the last regions, into red to match the Lost Colony aesthetic. Hello there, survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial here. And today I'm going to show you how to build this giant cathedral if you want something that matches the Lost Colony vibes, or you just want to have your own dark cathedral anywhere else. It is, of course, a very, very big base. So if you're enjoying and looking forward to this tutorial, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. The support really helps me out a ton. This base is very big, but I did manage to keep it just below the official limit with enough room for you to be able to decorate the base too. So even if you're unofficial, you will actually be able to build all of this. As far as I know, I haven't used any clipping or overlapping or things that aren't possible on official, so you should be good to go. So if you're looking for a cool Gothic themed base, perfect for Lost Colony, but you can definitely build it anywhere as long as you find a spot with enough space, then this might be the one for you, with a giant main hall that could be used for breeding or anything else, because there is a ton of space in there, and of course plenty of different layers for all of your storage and crafting needs, your cozy bedrooms, balconies to take off from on your flyers, you name it. This cathedral has a lot of room to offer. This is the entire shape of the foundations, which is, as I said, a rather large one, so you definitely want to look out for a good spot where you can fit all of this, because in the perfect situation you would definitely want to try and do this with all foundations so that you don't have to waste any additional structures for like pillars, supports and walls to cover up kind of ceilings that way. So yeah, you would definitely want to find a spot where you can fit all of these foundations. And of course we'll have to start out with the foundations. Now this is the back left corner of the building, and for the back we want to have 24 of these foundations going back to back. So that's quite a long way, so you'll definitely need to find a decent space with a bunch of room for your foundations, as we want to save on structures as much as possible, because this build is already going to be pretty damn big. So once we have reached the 24 mark, we want to expand this so that this side is 4 foundations, and then we can go out over here by adding just 1 foundation and then extending this by 2 on the outside. So once again we have 4 foundations over here, then we have this single one as a corner, and then 2 more foundations going to extend over here. And this side is actually going to be one of the major entrances. So what we want to do is take out our triangle foundations, turn them into quarters, put 2 of them right over here. Then we can have 3 full foundations before we go back into these quarters, and then another full foundation here at the very end. So in total, this is technically 6 foundations long, but we just want to recenter the middle here so that we can have a cellar door as the entrance, so that some larger creatures can still fit in and out. And then we can continue the build over at this side. So once again, we're going to expand this. We're going to have this single one here. So we have 2 foundations there, 1 over here, and then we can bring this out by 4 in total again. So 4 here on the outside, then this singular corner, and then 2 foundations over there, basically repeating what we already had there over on the other side. Then here on the front, we want to expand this to be 8 in total. So now we have 2. We want to expand this to be 8 in total, which is going to be another one of the side buildings, just as we have at the back there. And then we want to bring out these foundations. We want to add 3 foundations over here before we bring this one out like so. And then we want to have another one over here and then over here. And then we can continue this with 3 more foundations. Here at the very front, we can make sure this is 4 wide before we basically start repeating this entire process to end back up at the back corner. So over here, we can bring this back in. We can expand this like so. and then have these 4 over here. Then this side, of course, is going to be those 8 foundations that we want to have go all the way like this, which should line up with the one at the back corner at the other side, which means that this side is going to be 4 foundations. Then we can bring out this corner and then have these stick out by 2 foundations in total before we end up at the other entrance again. So we want to have 2 of those quarter foundations, 3 full foundations, 2 more quarters, and another full foundation over here before we repeat the same process. And then finally, we should link up with the one that we started with. And then, of course, we want to fill in the entirety of the inside, which of course is rather a lot, but now that we have laid out the edges, it is also kind of an easy job, because yeah, we just need to fill in this entire shape with all foundations, which again, it's a pretty big build, so you'll need a lot of space to make this one work, but I think in the end it's definitely going to be worth it. So for now, yeah, we just want to follow these edges, follow these lines, and start filling in all of this shape. And sometimes, especially here on Lost Colony, can be a little bit annoying with the snow in certain places where you can't really see where the actual landscape is. But if I'm correct, this space that I found should also be big enough, just as I did it right over there. But yeah, definitely looking for the right spot is going to be worth investing some time in. Because that will save you a lot of trouble and potentially also a lot of different structures if you don't have to do this with ceilings, pillars and walls just to get the floor in, because believe me, there's plenty of building ahead of us. So yeah, finding a good spot might take some time, but will be definitely worth it in the end. So for now, we're just going to continue. As I said, it is a rather large base. It's a large foundation. We'll need a lot of foundations just to fill in the shape that we have just made, but that's about half of it already. So then we can continue right over here, just doing the exact same thing and making sure that we at least have all of the foundation support in order. There won't actually be any real additions on the outside anymore, except of course a few staircases and entrances, but nothing major. So as long as this shape fits, you should be able to fit the rest of the base in there quite easily too. So again, we're just gonna continue to fill in all of these remaining spaces, but slowly but surely we should be getting there. We should be nearing the end of filling in this entire foundation with our blocks before we can start doing some actual building on the main structure. So yeah, there we go. Let's fill in these last remaining ones just like this, and then the final bit, and then we have a bunch of foundations down. But there we go. That's the entirety of the foundations that we need. And before we do any actual buildings, we're going to start with our behemoth gateways, because they actually form a lot of the basis for this build. So what we want to do over here is snap them right like this, so they are leaning on these extra corner foundations that we have. And that's kind of the end of the building that we want to have. Of course, we want to do the exact same thing here on the opposite side, and that is going to be like the 2 major ends of the main building. Then we want to find the same snap point again, but just around the corner of those first pillars. Place one of these down, place another one of those down, and we should have a third one to meet up with the ones that we started. So basically these are very big pillars that we're using them for, just because the Lost Colony behemoth gates are actually very nice to look at and very nice to include as part of your base. So there we go. Those should form the main foundation for the main hall of this build. And then right over here we should be able to find another snap point. Again, should end up at those singular foundations that we have on the outside. So we should be able to expand here onto this front. And then again, we want to go around the corner and then one more in between these to connect this back up. And that should give us the basic shape here to get us started. And since we're already working with gateways, let's add a few more. We want to have one here in the middle as one of the main entrances. Then we actually want to go over here to this side of the building. We can add a few next to each other over here. We can go just around the corner and make sure to line it up in the middle. So not right at the corner, but a little bit more to the middle. And then we can have another one right over here. So right next to one of those bigger ones. And we can repeat that same process over here on the opposite side. So have a few gates here, have one here in the middle. And then finally, we want to have one over here too, just to get a little bit of these side buildings shaped up already. Here at the back, we can actually have one here in this middle part as well. We will do the exact same thing, of course, on the opposite side of the building. And then all the way along the back, we can add in our gateways. And these are gonna form a very important part of our build and form our structure. And here at the very end, we actually want to take out our cellar doors, change them to the barn doors. And we can have one right here in the middle and another one in the middle of the other sides. This is why it's quite important to use these foundations the way we laid them out, because then it will allow you to snap right away. Then it's time to actually also grab our gate. We can add one right over here. We can add one right at this end. We can do the same here at the opposite ends of the building, and one all the way at the front. Those are going to be actual gates. The rest we're going to use as shaping up our windows. Now we can take out the Lost Colony structure skins, and at least we can skin all of these gateways. If you want to, you can also already skin all of the foundations. We're going to do it at some point, so you might as well get that over with, because again, it's quite a lot. But yeah, definitely we want to start to change all of these new gates to the Lost Colony structures, just to get a little bit of a better look of what we're working with, and yeah, shaping up the actual design, because especially these ones to the side with these nice arches are definitely going to change the appearance of our building quite a bit. But even these bigger pillars, you can see those nice spiky bits. That's why we're using them as part of the architecture, because those shapes are very nice and Gothic, and something we can't really achieve very easily ourselves. So that's why we want to use these bigger pieces. Here on the inside, we can actually add a few more additional details. Now, this is definitely one you can leave out if you want to save on some structures. But again, it's not that many extra structures that we're using here, and it just gives us a little bit of extra detail here on the very inside of our building, where we have a few extra of these pillars that we're using these behemoth gates for. So it's more of shaping up the inside here. As you can see, the shape of those pillars looking a little bit nicer. Okay, we're gonna get started here on the front of the building at this side of the side building. We want to have two large walls right next to our gateway here, and then of course we can fill in that gap with some normal walls. Up there we want to add a shallow slope wall here. We can then have some quarter walls, which of course means we can have another slope wall on top of there. We can raise up this one with some more full walls. We can have another quarter wall over there, and then we should be able to add in our final slope walls to finish up this part of the roof, or well, the shape of the roof at least, that we're gonna build up here. We can then also take out our stone pillar here along the side, and we want to skin at least the pillar here to the Lost Colony structure skin. And then here at the very front, we can actually take out some of these staircases, and we want to make sure that they kind of turn outwards, which is a really nice little shape for your staircase. Depending on your landscape, you might see more or less of that. Of course, you don't see a lot here because of all the snow. And then it's time to start here on making these beautiful windows. So first of all, here at the bottom, we just want to have a railing going from one side to the next. We can also change these railings to the Lost Colony skins just to make them fit in quite nicely like this. And then it's important to get started here on the inside wall. What we're going to do is we're going to have a quarter wall here, which we want to have right over there. Then for now, we just want to have a little pillar there so that we can turn around and add in our quarter walls across the bottom just like this. So we want to have them all the way towards the end, and we can actually start connecting these up all the way to the opposite end. There we go. We should be able to go all the way here until we meet this wall, where once again we're going to have some normal walls, of course, to fill in that part of the building. But for now, we're just focused on this section. Then over here, we can actually start by adding in a window. So this layer is going to be greenhouse glass, and then the next layer will be our sloped greenhouse glass walls. We want to paint the last two regions of these to red, or a red like color, so that it matches these red accents of the Lost Colony skins. And these bottom quarter walls we can also all change to the Lost Colony skins just to make them fit in quite nicely. And then for along this edge, we want to add our quarter roofs, just so that we can match this up again with the front layer of this building. So we just want to go along the entire edge of this, adding in these roofs. And we can change, of course, the skins of this. Oh, not the glass, of course. Just these roofs all the way from one side to the other. And then here on the outside at the front, we want to make sure that we have a layer of stone walls at the top over here. So that's what we get started with. We can snap those from those pillars at the front. We then want to take out our quarter walls and have a layer underneath that. So we just want to continue that from one side to the next. And then these ones in here, we can actually change the skins of because we want to fit them in with the Lost Colony gateways that we've used. So we want to just change those skins. And then over here, we want to flip around the slope walls and add them in. So basically inside out, because that's going to look nicer. You can also just flip the skins later, but this is just a little bit easier, saves you some time, because now once we skin it, we'll have those nice little red accents going on here, which is exactly what we want. You can already see we have a very nice window shape here. Just to add the final details, we want to add some railings in front of those, and also change these to the Lost Colony skins all the way across the entire build. And now that we've done that, we should still be able to go in here and then find the little temporary quarter wall that we placed to start with. We can take that out now, and it also means that we can take out this temporary pillar that we had there. Now it should all stay because we already snapped it now to this front wall. And yeah, as you can see, that gives us some very nice looking windows, especially once you've painted the greenhouse glass, the last two regions, to red or red like color, and the stone structures that we have and that we haven't skinned, we want to all change to the paint to the gunmetal color for all regions, except the foundations. The foundations, as I said before, we want to all change to the Lost Colony skin. And then finally, of course, we need to add an actual roof on top of this. So we want to start over here, go along with our ramps all the way to the top layer, and make it stick out one here at the bottom. And then we just want to go across the entire side here until we meet the end of the wall here. We can bring this all the way up, of course, until those pillars. And yeah, we want to just bring this all the way across to get our first roof in here. And once we've done that, we actually want to change all of these to the Lost Colony skins. With the snow, they kind of blend in and look similar to the normal roofs, but actually they are a little bit darker and they have a little bit more of the glowy elements, which you can see a little bit poking through there. You can see it definitely near the pillars, because that's where there's no snow, of course. But yeah, there we go. We have a nice little roof, and especially once you do all the painting, this is a really good start to the building here, with some very nice looking windows, as you can see. Now, you might have already guessed this, but we're actually going to repeat this same process once more, of course, on the other side, but also at the back of the building. So we have quite a bit of building to do. So for now, we're going to, of course, fill in these large walls here at the end. We can do the exact same thing over here, and we'll do it next to this entrance too. Then we can have a walls to fill in between those. We can do the exact same here, and we can actually already build up the next layer as well. We might as well get that going right away, and of course do the same thing over here. Fill those in, take out all quarter walls, add 2 here and 1 at the very end, and we want to again repeat this for all of these different parts. It's a little bit easier in my experience to kind of combine these steps, so you don't have to keep finding the structures and repeating the same things separately. It's a lot easier to do it all at once, so that's why we're kind of going back and forth between all these different sides. But yeah, the same principle goes. We want to build up this shape of the wall. We can do the exact same thing over here, of course. There we go. And then finally, we want to have the pillar at the end of the wall, obviously. Change that to the Lost Colony skins, of course. And don't forget about adding in the entrance here with some nice stairs. And again, we're going to do that for all of the different sides, of course. So build up those pillars. And then add in a nice staircase. And here you can see a little bit more of what that staircase actually looks like. And then finally, one more side over here. Bring up those pillars. Add in those stairs and change it all to the Lost Colony skins. So first of all, we will actually go across the top here, add in those walls from one side to another. Here on the other side, of course, it's gonna be all the way across the back. So where in the front of the building we obviously have that extra entrance, here we can just go from one side all the way to the other to add in those walls, and then we can actually already add in all quarter walls underneath it, just to get these shapes and the wall ready for our beautiful windows. And I actually really like the window design on these, and especially since it requires nothing that isn't part of the main game itself, which is really nice, of course, because everyone will see exactly what you have built. And then here on this side, of course, we also want to add those quarters underneath, just a few, of course, here on this end. But yeah, we want to repeat that all the way through. And then, of course, we can bring out our slope walls, find the right spot and flip them around to add in these shapes for our window. There we go. And that means, of course, that we can skin this layer to the Lost Colony skins, just to get us started. And then, of course, along the very bottom, we also want to make sure that we add in our railings, as well as in these shapes right over here, just so that we can have them all changed to the Lost Colony skins. There we go. We kind of have the shapes ready. Oh, don't forget to also skin these railings, obviously. And there we go. So we have those windows ready. Now let's also do that, of course, here at the back. So again, we're going to repeat with our railings all the way across the bottom over here, just like so. Then, of course, we want to add in these slope walls here, and making sure that they're the right way around for us, so that we don't have to flip all those skins, because that would take a lot longer to do than just flipping these structures. There we go. We want to make sure that we do this all the way through from one side to the other, getting these window shapes ready. There we go. And then, of course, adding in the railings. And once we've done that, we can, of course, change them to the Lost Colony skins. And again, we want to bring this across the entire side of the building. So yeah, quite a lot of work, of course. But again, it is a pretty big building. But once we have done these side building, we've already made very good progress on the outside of the first layer here. There we go. We can just repeat this process all the way across the side here. And I think in these doses, the Lost Colony skin can be quite nice, just as long as we blend it in with the normal structures. And of course, also these railings across the bottom, we want to change those to the Lost Colony skins from one side to the next, just like this, all the way across. And then, of course, we still need to bring in the windows on the inside. So again, we want to have a temporary quarter wall and then a temporary pillar, so that we can actually add our quarter walls all the way along the bottom here. So again, from that one side all the way to the very end is where we want to add them in. Then we want to add our greenhouse glass walls all the way across this side. Add in our slope walls, of course, to get the shape of the window in quite nicely. And then finally, we want to bring out our quarter roofs and add them in between so that we can kind of connect these two different walls with each other. So we want to do that from one side to the next. We can now remove the temporary pillar. And if we go in between, we should be able to remove that temporary quarter wall too. And then once we're back on the inside, we can, of course, change this bottom layer all the way across from one side to the other. And we can also change the skins of these roofs over here. So we just want to bring that all the way across. And then, of course, painting the last two regions of all the greenhouse structures into the red or reddish colors, so that they match the Lost Colony structures a bit better, which means we can move over to the other side and repeat this once more. So temporary quarter wall, temporary pillar, and start placing down our quarter walls from one side all the way to the other for this one. So yeah, we want to go all the way across, but this will add in those lovely windows all the way at the back of the building, giving us some nice lights, you know, to look outside. They match the Lost Colony structures quite well if you paint them red. And well, even though I don't like the greenhouse glass particularly well, I think it just about manages to do the trick once you paint it. But definitely feel free to play around and, of course, use cosmetics if you do have them and don't mind using them. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, there is a build that you don't need any cosmetics for. At least not custom cosmetics. And we can then fill in these shapes of the windows all the way across again, matching up with the design on the outside. Oh, there we go, the final one. And then, of course, we can add in or roof pieces to connect the two walls up with each other from one side to the other. And we're just gonna bring this all the way across. There we go. Just keep it going all the way until we meet the end. And now that we've done that, we can remove the temporary pillar. We can go back to the outside, of course, and remove the temporary quarter wall there, because now everything is connected. Then we can bring out all Lost Colony skins, and we can start by changing all these roofs to the Lost Colony structure skin. And again, we're gonna go all the way along this side, changing all of these roofs until we meet the other end. There we go. And then we also want to do it here along the bottom of the build for these quarter walls, all the way across from one side to the next. And there we go. Then, of course, once again, we're going to take out our ramps and we're going to start on the actual roof itself, because that's the final part that needs to be done for all of these side buildings. So again, we're going to start over here, bringing across the roof all the way to the inside line of these pillars on the front. There we go. And then, of course, we also want to do these bottom layers so that we have a nice overhang on the outside and a nice roof ready to go, which, of course, we are going to change to the Lost Colony skins all the way across this side. There we go. And we'll do the same thing here on the opposite side, of course. This is definitely a very big roof, but we're gonna do it nonetheless. So all the way up there. And then, of course, we want to start bringing these ramps all the way across as our roof. So just want to continue going all the way. It's a pretty big build, of course, so plenty of ramps will get added, but we'll have a really good start to our build now with these side wings in place. So there we go. We want to continue to build this all up, and then, of course, bring these layers across the same way. Sometimes might be easier just to bring this across. Just misplacing all of those pieces. So yeah, we want to bring this all the way across to the other side and then fill in these final two layers of the roof. I keep misplacing them. I'm gonna have to really remove all those misplaced webs after I'm done here. But yeah, we want to just continue going all the way across here, and there we go. And then there's only one remaining thing, of course, for these roofs, and that is to change them all to the Lost Colony skins. There we go. And well, that's gonna keep going for all of these again. It's a rather big part, but as you'll see, the first stage of the building is definitely taking shape now, which is a really cool sight to see. So we want to bring all of these across just like this. And there we go, the final few. And we have a nice roof, we have a nice back to the building, and we're ready to move on to the next phase. Okay, then back on the inside here, we have one of these side building pieces, and we're gonna basically build the divider between that side part of the building and this main hall. We're gonna take out a large wall here, and we're gonna start right over here, placing one down here and another one down there, and then the same thing can be done right there. So gaps of 2 between them, and we actually want to place these full walls right there in the middle, and then we can actually make sure that these are all 2 large walls high. So we want to raise another layer on top of these to make sure that they're 2 large walls high, so 8 walls, I guess, in total. There we go, which should match up pretty much with these behemoth gates. So that's one section. We of course want to do that again over here. So we're just gonna repeat the same kind of process and of course have those as well. And again, we also want to make sure that we raise these up to be the right height. So 2 large walls high. When placing them, we want to make really sure that we're getting the right snap points, because at least if you have clipping enabled, sometimes they like to snap into each other instead of on top of each other. But there we go, that should be the right height here. And then here on the other side, of course, we can continue the same pattern as we have before. This time, however, it is of course going to continue all the way, because, well, we don't have any interruptions here, just as we have on the opposite side. So we just want to continue this all the way across the build here. There we go. And adding in those middle parts. And then again, we want to raise all of these up, of course. So we're gonna make sure that they are all going to be the right height. There we go. And just like that, we can do all of these across all of these different sides, all the way to the very end. And then next up here on the outside, we want to make sure that we add one more layer on top of them. So there's a full wall here above these pillars. Same thing over here on the opposite side. So adding in all of those walls. We'll leave the middle gap open, of course, because we're going to have that extra entrance here. But then on the opposite side, we can add in that layer from one side all the way over to the other side. So yeah, we can just continue this wall all the way across until the very end, which will already shape up the next layer of the building a little bit. You can already see some nice shapes that we're going to once again turn into windows. We'll start here over at the front, and first of all, we just want to add in our slope walls to shape up these windows a little bit, and we'll do that for all of these, of course. So we're just going to go around, add those in, and then the same here at the very back of the building. Just like this, shaping them up so that we get some nice windows ready here. There we go. And once we have done that, we want to add in some of our railings at the very top as a nice little bit of detail. Although this is definitely, of course, something you could consider leaving away if you were afraid of hitting build limit. But we'll do the same for all of these windows. Getting those nice details in there. There we go. Then we want to take out our quarter roofs, and we can add them just around the outside here. Same over there. And of course, we're going to do this for all of these windows now. So we're just going to go along the edges, add in a few of these little details to make these walls a bit less boring and a bit more interesting to look at. So we want to just continue this all the way from one side to the other. So we're going to quite a few windows here. There we go. Then we want to take out our quarter ceilings, and here at the very end we want to add 2 against each of those walls right along the edge here of the roof. So we're going to do the same thing over here for all of these openings, and of course that means we'll do the exact same thing on the opposite side of the building, adding in these quarter ceilings. This is to create some different snap points we'll need. And we want to continue this for all of these windows that we now have. So yeah, we want to just go across them all, check them all at these little quarter ceilings to the end. And then in the middle, we can enter a full ceiling again so that we fill in the gap in between. So again, do that all on the one side. And of course, do the same thing over here on the front of the building so that we continue to fill in these shapes. Now that we have those in place, we should be able to take out our greenhouse walls with those quarters. We should be able to snap in the middle of these ceilings, have our two walls, and we're going to do that for all of these little windows. This is so that we can have a little bit more depth for our windows, but we're still, you know, adding them in the middle so that even from the inside, there's a little bit of depth there and not like a weird little mess that we have to clean up. So we'll do that for all of these, of course, all the way along, getting all windows in the right place. There we go. And once we've done that, we of course want to finish them off here with some sloped walls so that we get those nice window shapes. And once we've placed all the windows, once again, we of course want to paint the last two regions to a red or a red-like color so they match a little bit nicer with the Lost Colony vibes. There we go. Although you could definitely play around with the colors if you want to go for different vibe, of course. Then we want to take out our roofs and we want to snap a full roof here to the inside. So just a full roof over here on the inside. There we go. And of course, once again, we want to continue that for this entire building. There we go. And of course, we can continue that same thing over here on the inside of the building. And we want to continue this all the way through. And then finally, this final sector over at the front. And the last one over here. There we go. Then it's time to bring out all pillars. We want to have pillars right over here. And we want to have one right here in the middle. So we want to reach that all the way up. We want to have one above the roofs. And there we go. We also want to add one here at the very end. And then actually we want to raise up these pillars by 2 higher than the walls themselves over here. And we can of course keep this whole part going. So we want to add more of these in. Make sure we raise them up to be the right height. Add one on the corner there. And of course here on the sides of those windows. And again, we can continue to do that for all of these sections. So we want to just add in those pillars wherever we can and wherever we need to. Here on the back, it's important that we leave open the middle section. So we just want to do it at that end and then here over at the other end. Because the middle is going to have some different things going on. So we just want to add them at the same places basically as we do add them on the front. We can, however, still add, of course, our pillars here to the side of our windows. Now the outside looks pretty nice. We'll also worry about the inside a little bit. First of all, we want to add our slope walls on top of those roofs we added. So we want to do that all the way along all of them on the inside of our building. There we go. Same thing over here. Continue that over there. There we go. Then, of course, we want to shape this up to look a little bit nicer. So what we want to do is bring out our walls underneath those ceilings. We want to have one layer of walls continuing and connecting these two sides up. There we go. We also want to make sure that we add those on the opposite side here. Just so that that continues to look the same. And once we start to shape up the rest of the build, we already have those walls present, of course. Means that we'll do the same thing over here on the opposite side of the building. And we can add in those walls everywhere. There we go. That gives a little bit more shape. And now we want to bring out our slope walls again and add them underneath to make another one of these arches, just to make kind of the pass through from the main hall into these side parts of the building a little smoother. So we'll just add in all of those slope walls everywhere. There we go. Oh, and in some cases I seem to have forgotten the walls here. But yeah, we definitely want to make sure that both sides match, so that once we have these arches in place, it's going to be really easy to complete them. There we go. I think these are the final ones. We've already done those. So then once again, we can take out our roofs, of course, add them in here to create those nice arches here on the inside, so that we also have some, you know, nice looking architecture here. In a building as big as this, you definitely want that. And there we go. Can continue those all the way across until we reach the place where we already started. And then we can bring out our stone pillars. We want to bring it all the way up to the top of this layer, and of course connect them all the way back down into the ground. And of course we can do this for all of these sections that we've created, and this will give a lot of more support to the inside of the build, which I think is quite nice. Gives it a much stronger and supported look, and overall just some nice details even here on the inside of our building, because I mean that's probably where you're spending most time if you're going to do some breeding projects, etc. here on the inside. So we might as well make sure that it looks nice. So we want to bring up these everywhere and connect them back down into the main hall. There we go. Bring these all up and back down to the ground. And of course we'll do the exact same thing here on the opposite side, making sure that we have all of these sections complete. Bring those pillars down as supports and back up to the top. And then finally, of course, this side, we want to do the same thing. Bring them all the way up and all the way down. And then finally over here, bring these up and bring these down. And then we have all of these pillars in shape. If you want to add some additional details, what you can do is have some railings here on the inside. Definitely one of the things you could get rid of if you're worried about the structure limit. But it does look quite nice to have them, especially once we change them to the Lost Colony skins. Oops. We'll do that in a little bit once we finish this entire section, so we can change all the pieces to the Lost Colony skins that need to. We want to just go for a moment here to the inside of the building, and also over here we can add a few of these pillars where we need them. just to make sure that this build also looks supported. Again, definitely a piece that you could maybe leave out, because you're not going to see these as often as the other ones, but it does feel a little bit nicer to make sure that these sides look just as nice as the main hall itself. So I'll leave that up to your decisions whether or not you want to include these. But there we go. We can bring them all the way across here. And then of course it also means we can do the same thing here on the opposite side. Bring all those supports across. There we go. And then finally, this last little bit, of course. Bring these pillars down, these pillars up. And then the final little bit here we can do as well. And then again, if you want to, you can have the extra detail here by adding in these railings. Again, very much optional if you want to save on your structure count. But, you know, you can decide for yourself. Of course, adding details is something I can't resist. But yeah, you might not have the luxury depending on the limit wherever you play. There we go. Now we want to take out all Lost Colony skins. Then here on this side, we want to make sure that we skin all of these except the bottom one. And the same over there. So that's how we're going to skin them on this side of the entrance. So we'll do the same here. Kind of giving a little, a little blend to the different structures. And we also actually can skin these roofs on the inside, so we get those nice golden details poking through, which is definitely a good look for us. So we want to have those available as well, and we can continue these, of course, all the way across. Then we're going to do the same thing, of course, on the opposite side here. So we'll just do these first. Same principle, those three pillars, the railings, as well as the roofs. And then, of course, the final section over here. Again, the same thing. There we go. And then we're done on those inside bits. But then the main hall itself, we can use the same principle here to skin these railings as well as some of these pillars, but we can also change those over here so that they also look nice. There we go. We'll continue that everywhere, of course. So we want to make sure that we change all of these, change those bits, and continue that everywhere. And then on the other side, it's of course going to be the exact same thing. So again, we want to change these skins, add them over here, continue them all the way around our build to get those details looking as nice as we want them. There we go. And I like to do these now because it's a lot easier working with the natural light than once we have the roof on top of it, of course. So that's why we do it basically section by section, trying to detail and skin the parts of the building. Keeps it a little bit easier than having to go back and forth all the time, I think. There we go. So that should be the entire inside skinned. Then, of course, we can do some skinning here on the outside as well. So we want to do those railings, the pillars, and of course these roofs. So again, these pillars on the side of the windows, those railings, the roofs, and then finally, and then we can actually also do these ceilings if you want to. And then finally, we can also skin these pillars that are sticking out the top. And that means we can do this for all of the different sections again, of course. So yeah, we just want to go around and making sure that we skin all those pieces so they look the way we want them to look. There we go. That's the front of the building. Then we'll do the same thing here on the other side to continue this for this part of the building. There we go. All the way across. Same over here. And then we can continue this, of course, for all of the different sections. So we just want to continue those. So even though there's no pillars above, we still want to, of course, skin these roofs and the insides here so that they match the rest of our style. So we'll just continue these. There we go. And then finally, of course, these top pillars. And then one final detail is bringing out a thin pillar and actually adding them on top of all of these pillars that we've already got going. I promise this will all make sense later on in the build, but for now, this is the final piece that we want to add to these pillars that we've just made. And definitely these pillars are a potential detail you could leave out, I suppose. But yeah, I quite like it, and especially if you see the final result, I think it's definitely a worthy addition. So we just want to add them and change them all to the right skins. Then we'll focus on these entrances at the front or at the sides, kind of depending on what way you look at the building. So we want to add some stairs in front of there, of course. We can do the exact same thing on the opposite side. And then we can, of course, bring out our pillars and make sure that we raise them up along the sides here. So we can do that all the way on one side. And of course, on the other side, we can do the exact same thing to kind of give a little bit more shape to these gates. We want to change the skins of just the stairs, not necessarily the pillars. I think we'll keep those looking normal stone. And of course, we'll paint that because we'll paint all the stone that we don't skin. We want to have some large walls here on the corners, and then we'll have some quarter walls in those gaps all the way to the top of those pillars, just like this. And then finally we'll fill in the remaining gap over here with our full walls. Then we want to bring out those slope walls. We want to add 2 right here on the corner and the same thing right over there. That also means we can bring out our pillars again. We can have them all the way from that corner back down into the ground. And we actually want to add a railing underneath this section. Those we can skin, and we can also skin those pillars going down into the ground just like this. Then here in the middle, we want to find this snap point. We want to have 2 pillars go up, 2 pillars go up there, and a beam going across the bottom. We can skin the pillars, leave the beam, and then we can add a nice window here, just like so. Then we can bring out our stone walls, shape them up just close enough to this shape, and we have our slope walls to finish it up. The top one, we want to flip around like that, and then we can just kind of fill in the rest of the shape. Change those to the Lost Colony skins, and then we have the front or the side of the building ready. We'll of course have to replicate that over here on the other side. So we'll do the same thing. Large walls on the corners, quarter walls to fix the gaps in between the large wall, and of course the gate or the cellar door itself. We want to fill this in with normal walls all the way. Slope wall here on the corner, and on that corner a railing underneath, and then a nice pillar from that corner. From that corner down into the ground. Same thing over here on the other side. And we want to take out the Lost Colony skins again. Change those. Change this. And then once again, we can have 2 pillars going up here, 2 pillars there, a beam in between, skin the pillars, and add in a lovely window here in the middle. Then we can start filling in the rest of the wall, just like so. Shape up these sides, and then finally flip around the top layer so we can skin them in the Lost Colony skin. Once we've done that, we want to take out our large walls again. We want to add 3 over here right next to each other, just like this. Same over here on the opposite side, and then in between these sections we actually want to take out our stairs, add them in over there on the side. Same over here, bring those out a little bit, and then we'll repeat that same progress on the other side. So again, large walls right here, large walls on the other side over here, and then we can fill in with our stairs up until the building itself. And of course we do that on both sides of the building. And then we can bring out our full roofs, making sure to have one over the edge here on the front, and we can fill this in all the way to the top here so that we have a little entrance ready. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side, of course. Bring that roof back down here all the way into the building. And if you want to add some extra details on here, what you want to do is have a full beam here at the end and a half beam in between with some railings linking them up. The railings themselves we want to skin into the steampunk skins, and those we can change to the Lost Colony ones, as well as the roof itself, because I quite like the look of these roofs, so we want to do that for all of those. And of course we can continue that over here for this roof all the way to the top, and that gives us one of the entrances. Of course, the greenhouse glass, we want to paint the last 2 regions red, and all of the stone that we haven't skinned, we want to change that to the gunmetal, paint that to gunmetal and get the nice dark Gothic look. But of course, we also want to make sure that we add this roof over on the opposite side. So also here, we're going to bring up these roofs, and we're going to just make sure that we fill this all the way in, and do the exact same thing here on the other side, making sure that we have these 2 entrances ready. Then of course we can bring out a pillar, half pillar there, and then the full pillar at the end, with of course our railings that we can skin to the steampunk one in the middle, and then of course change the rest of this all to the Lost Colony skin. Bring this all the way across, and then finally the roof on the other side, of course, just the same. Change that all, and there we go. We're getting quite far now with the bottom layer of this build. Okay, then it's time to work on this front entrance over here. Again, we want to take out our large walls, 1 over here and 3 over there at the sides, and then another one right there. So we'll do the same thing over here. Add in all those large walls, of course, connect up those walls in between. And then finally, we also want to add some large walls over here. So 2 large walls right there. Same thing on the opposite side. And then we want to have some large walls like this. Same over here, shaping this up a little bit. And then finally, also right here, just before those pillars. Here at the very front, we want to add these slope walls on the corners, just like that. Have our railings underneath, and then of course our pillars that go up to that point. Same thing over here on the other side. We can change those to the Lost Colony skins there as well. And then we want to make the actual entrance. We'll actually need a foundation or ceilings, whatever you prefer. You can make this as wide as you want, so you can make it 2 wide or just 1, depending on how big you want this entrance to be, if you want to have creatures being able to get in here. But then we want to have our stairs to the sides. If the landscapes let you, you can have some slope walls there, and of course change those to the Lost Colony skins. Then we actually want to make sure that we have some railings going across the sides, and we can of course skin all of those as well, so that we have a nice looking entrance here. Then we want to have some slope walls going off to the sides like this. Have all full walls there. Then another slope wall over here, creating this shape to go up. And then of course the final two we can flip around so that we can skin those to the Lost Colony structures. Then here on the inside, we actually want to bring out our quarter roofs. We want to make sure that that goes all the way around the outside here. And then just to get a temporary snap point, we want to place down a ceiling here. We can then have our greenhouse glass slope walls there, and then we should be able to take out the ceiling and the glass will stay, so that we have a lovely window there as a nice detail for entrance here. Then of course we want to go over to the sides here. We want to switch to the stairs, add them in here at the sides, just as we did on the other ones, and add them right here too. Then switching to the normal roofs, we can of course add in the roofs themselves. So we want to fill this all the way up to the top and have an overhang here on the very front. And we can do the same thing here on the opposite side, adding the roof all the way across. Take out a pillar, full pillar at the end, little half pillar here in the middle, and of course have a railing on the top that we can change to the steampunk skins. And then we can change the pillars as well as the roof itself to the Lost Colony skins, of course. And we want to continue that right here on the other side. Then we can go back here on the inside. Right here at the corner, we want to make sure that we continue those large walls up so that they're almost the same height as the behemoth gates. And we can also do that for these sections again. So we want to raise all of those large walls up by one more. So total there will be 8 walls high. And of course we can do that for all of these sections. There we go. I just noticed that we haven't added one here yet. We of course also want to add one on that side, and that means on this side too. There we go. So we have some shapes ready for the windows that we're going to build. And then on top here on the outside, we want to raise it up by one more wall all the way across the side like this. And we can do the same thing over here on the opposite side. So we want to bring these all the way across, and then below we can start shaping up some window shapes here. Some slope walls there. We'll have the same slope walls over here on the opposite side. We want to take out our quarter ceilings again, and we want to place them here. So one wall down from those slope walls we just added in, and we can basically go around to all of these different sections and make sure that we add them in around the same height. So we'll do that right over here as well. And then in between, of course, we can add in our full ceilings. Again, we want to do that for all of these different sections. And then we also want to add in our railings right at the edge here of those slope walls for all of those, of course. Then what we want to do is we bring out our walls again. We want to continue them along the bottom here of this layer. We can actually do the same thing here on the inside, making sure that we continue that. So we'll do the same thing over here on the opposite side, of course. Have those walls in there. Have those walls across the bottom over here. And then underneath, we once again want to add some slope walls in the same shape to create another arch. So we're going to do that for all of these. There we go. Just like this. And then actually we're going to make a slight adjustment here, of course, above those gates. So we want to take out the slope walls and instead just continue the full walls down all the way until they meet that gate. So we still kind of have this arch, but of course it leads to the gate, so we don't need the arch to be open on the other side. So we just want to have this right here on the inside. And if you want, we can of course add in those railings here. So we want to do the same thing over here. Add in all those railings all the way across. And then we want to add in these roofs here so that we have those ready as well. We can of course do the same thing here at the top. So we want to add in our roofs here above those windows that we've created, which also means that we can add in our slope walls over here. There we go. And then finally above there, we can add a 2-high wall again. So we want to just raise these up a little bit, and definitely not the outside there. We can also raise up the sides by 1. There we go. Just making sure that they meet the same height as the outer wall. And above those, we can add in some slope walls to finish off these pillars, basically, that they are, just so that they will fit the shape of the building. And then of course here on the top we can have our greenhouse glass snapped to the middle of those windows, just like this. And of course our slope walls right on top of there, so that we get our windows ready. There we go. And then here at the bottom sections for these windows, we want to place down our walls first. So a layer of full walls across the bottom here. Then we want to take out our quarter walls again. So we want to add 2 over here on both sides. And then on the opposite side, the same thing. Of course, a ceiling in the middle. And then once we've done that, we should be able to add in our windows going all the way up. And the same on the opposite side. And of course, finishing it off with some slope walls on top. Once we've done that, we can of course bring out our pillars. So we want to make sure that we have them here and just bring them down all the way from the top to the bottom here. And we can of course do the same thing over here on the other side. Bring it all the way up. And we'll repeat that process over here, of course. Just having these pillars go all the way from the top to the bottom. Same over here. Making sure that those supports look nice. And then once again, on the other side, we can make sure that we have the pillar going all the way to the top and bring it back down to the ground. Same thing over here. And then we can just continue them all the way back. And then of course here on the inside we can do some skinning. The first pillar we can leave. We can then skin of course those roofs, the railings, and those 3 pillars. We can go up to this layer. We can skin this one. And of course the roofs. And we can repeat that for each of these sections. Just want to do the same thing there. And we can actually also skin those ceilings here. And there we go. Bring that all the way around. Of course, you want to paint the windows. Again, the last 2 regions into red colors. And we can do all of these skins the same way. There we go. Bring them all the way across. And of course, here on the outside as well, we want to make sure that we skin those railings and those ceilings. Same over here on the other side. We can, of course, add some pillars here on the outside so that we have them at the edges too. And then the same over here, making sure we have them, and then add a nice pillar here along the side of the window. Just like that. And of course, here on the outside, we definitely want to add in a few extra details, like having this little roof. We don't want to continue it because it's going to overlap with the other structure. So we'll add a roof up here and making sure that that looks nice. We can, of course, change those skins to the Lost Colony structures. Same over here on top of there, and we can change those as well. We can do the same thing, of course, on the opposite side, changing those skins, adding in a pillar here, as well as adding in a little roof for detail, just like so, and continue that over here on the top, of course, adding in those pillars, changing all these skins, and then finally we'll also add in the roofs around these windows up here so that they look their nicest. And then we can, of course, skin those to the Lost Colony skins too. Then we want to go back to the inside. Here in the middle, we want to make sure that we have a pillar going all the way up to the very top layer. We can do the exact same thing here on the opposite side, making sure that this goes all the way up. And then here on the outside, we want to have a pillar there, pillar here, and a pillar over there. We can do the same thing on the other side, adding in those pillars. There we go. And then we can actually raise up this pillar too high, this pillar too high, and then the ones in the middle we raise up by 1. We can, of course, do the same thing up on the other side of the building. So raise up these pillars. Then changing to the thin pillar and adding another one on top of all of these. And then the same thing on the opposite side. Then here along the front, we want to add in some slope walls just like this, all the way along the side. And then we can actually take out our quarter walls here again. We want to add 2 right here, 2 right over there, and then of course a full ceiling right there in the middle. We can, of course, fill up this one with a full wall, as well as these. Same over here to kind of get the shape of the building right. We want to have slope walls right over there and over there. Don't mind our new guest. And the same thing over here on the opposite side. To save on some structures, we can, of course, add a full large wall here and another large wall there. And then have some normal walls on top of that. And then the window in here is actually going to be 4 high. So we can add 4 of these greenhouse glass walls and then slope walls right on top of that, which means the top part of this can just kind of follow this shape. And then the final ones, of course, we want to flip around so we can skin them into the Lost Colony skins. Then we want to take out our pillars. We want to have some pillars go up along the side of this. Same over here. And of course, we can change those to the Lost Colony structures. We can also have some railings here at the bottom just to kind of frame this a little bit nicer. And if you want to, we can of course do the same thing over here at the very top. And then of course, finally, we want to have a large wall over here and another large wall over at that side to kind of close in these sides a little bit. And then it also means that we can have some roofs in here to make sure that this is all covered. We can change those skins. And of course, we also want to have the pillars here on the inside. We can actually lower these by 1. And then we can, of course, change the skins of these pillars to the Lost Colony ones. And we want to have some slope walls right over here. We can have some walls underneath that one. And then we kind of want to continue this roof just that little bit further to get this all covered up. And then before we do anything else, we're going to actually start by adding a staircase here on the inside. We want to start right over here. And we want to bring this up by 4 in total before we add our ceilings here. And we can go all the way across to the opposite side here and all the way up to the front window. And here for the sides, I would just cover these walls up because that's going to look a little bit nicer. And you could even change those to the Lost Colony skins if you wanted to. Creates kind of like a nice little reading nook. And of course, we want to make sure that we add our railings here to the side of the staircase, as well as the other side, of course. And these final two over here. Then we can definitely also skin everything about this staircase. So the railings, the stairs itself, of course. And I would probably even skin all of these ceilings as well. Either to the Lost Colony one or a different one if you want to go for a different aesthetic on the inside. But then we're not done yet. We want to continue this staircase right over here by going up by another 2 over here. We of course want to add in our railings once again. We can of course skin this entire staircase like this, and it means we can start connecting these up again. So we want to bring out the ceilings all the way to the very sides here. We can bring this all the way back to the front there. So we want to do that for all of these. There we go. Technically there is a little gap there, so you might want to have another ceiling in there. And we want to continue this all the way to the end of this window at the very least. So we'll continue that all the way through. We of course want to have some more railings along these sides, and we can of course skin all of these ceilings to the Lost Colony ones as well, so that we have this entire layer covered for sure. There we go. And this is of course going to be one of the ways, or the way actually, to get up, unless you want to use teleporters. So of course here at the very end we also want to add in a railing from one side to the other, so that we don't fall off into our main hall. And right over here where we have the staircase, we want to leave a gap of 3, so just before the end where we start the next staircase up to the actual main tower that is going to be the next layer. So we also want to of course make sure that we have our railings ready, and that we have this staircase for the next layer. Which also means we can start with the ceilings, which we want to bring all the way into these corners, of course. All the way off back to the outside here. And this should line up with the top of some of these pillars that we've made for this main hall. So first of all, we want to just make sure that we add ceilings all over this main hall in the middle. Oh, not over there. Just on top of here, so that we have this this start of the tower ready to be built up. Then here at the back wall, actually, we want to remove this one. So where those, well, the top of the behemoth gate is still poking through, we can actually remove those. What we want to do then is take out our behemoth gates once again. At the very end here, we want to snap one. That's going to be, of course, the corners of this tower. We want to have another one here, another one over there, and another one right in the middle there. So again, we're going to use these as giant pillars for this tower that is going up in the middle, as you can already see. And now that we have that in place, we can actually first, of course, finish this area that we just worked on. So we can bring up these stairs by 4, which should line up all the way here to the front, which we aren't going to overlap over here. So we just want to follow along the edges of what we've built and fill in this roof like this. And of course, the same thing over here on the other side. So we just want to make sure that we add in this roof along the top of this part of the building. Bring this up again. And bring this all the way across the front. Finally, we of course want to add a pillar at the very end. Then some half pillars along the side, and then finally we can have a railing on top, which we can change of course to the steampunk skin for some nice spikes. And then the pillars we of course want to change to the Lost Colony skin, as well as the actual roof itself. So we can change all of these to look like these nice roof textures. And then we also want to change these pillars that stick out of the top of the roof. And of course the other side is going to be the exact same thing. So we want to switch all these skins out like this, and then continue going up for this whole layer and continue all the way up there as well. There we go. And then as a final additional detail, we can add some railings here at the very front along the top layer, and those we can switch to the Lost Colony skins just to give a little bit of extra shape here to one of these main entrances. And you can already see the building is really starting to take shape now. And in fact, we can add a few more roofs in already. So over here, we also want to take up a roof. We only want to go up by 2 in total for now. So we want to just continue to bring this all the way along the side here. And we want to do that on the other side of the building as well, of course. So we'll bring this along the front here, raising up these roofs just like that. Then we'll switch to the opposite side here. And again, we can add 2 layers of roofs going up. So we just want to bring these across. There we go. And then of course we'll leave the tower open, but on this side we can continue again with these layers. So bringing this roof all the way across to the very end over here. And at the very front we can have some of these railings going across the edge of the roof, and we can change those to the Lost Colony skins as well as the roofs themselves. So we want to switch all of those in, and then we can do the same over at the other side. Change them all to the Lost Colony skins. And of course, we want to do that for all of the remaining sections of roof. We can of course have these railings in here. And then finally for this section as well, add them and skin all of them so that we have a good start for sure at the next layer of the building. And you can already definitely start to see now that it is starting to take shape. Okay, then finally we want to connect these 2 layers at the very end. We can also bring them across here along the sides of those roofs. So we just want to do that for now, basically. We'll leave the middle open for now so that we have a little bit of light still coming in below whilst we work on fixing all of those areas. So again, we just want to kind of connect these different sides up with each other. But here at the very end, we can expand this by 2 on the outside. So kind of like a balcony. And we can do that for both sides of the building actually. And then underneath, we can of course add in some supports. So we just want to have that one here and that one over there. And we can do the exact same thing over here on the opposite side. So just making sure that we have those supports in place. Then we can take out all large walls here, and we want to add one over there, one next to it, and another one until we have 4 of them in a row. We can do the same thing here on the opposite side. So we want to have one over here, one over there, another one here, and finally one there. Then we can take out our slope walls. We can add them right in those 2 places. Same over here. Making sure we add them in. Opposite side, of course, is going to be the exact same thing. Place in those slope walls to follow the shape of the roof. On top of this slope wall, we can, of course, add another large wall going up to almost the top of the roof. And then we have some normal walls next to it. And we can fill in the remaining gaps with our slope walls so that we can finish this side of that wall as well. Then we'll do the exact same thing over here, of course. So making sure that we add in those large walls on top of those slope walls, some normal walls right above the behemoth gates, and then the final slope walls to fill in the gaps. And then we can actually change the skins of these to the Lost Colony structures, as well as the balcony for now. The same thing over there on the other side. Change the balcony skin and change the supports. And we also want to make sure that we actually add in a nice little railing along the edge here of this balcony. So we have one over here and we have another one over on the other side, of course. We can also change those again to the Lost Colony skins. We'll do the exact same thing over on the opposite side. And then finally, to give this place a little bit more shape, we should have one more behemoth gate there, another one at the other edge, and of course the same thing here on the other side of the building. Once again, using these large behemoth gates as giant pillars for the final layer here on the two side buildings. You can see they will be quite narrow, but we'll still use these cool skins and these cool design of those pillars as part of our build. So back here on the inside of our build, at the end of the stairs that we already made, we want to add a dino gate, which we can then skin to the Lost Colony structures, which is going to be the entrance into the tower. Now, these ceilings themselves, you can totally all skin to the Lost Colonies ones as well, if you prefer the look of those. And then next to this gate, we want to add some large walls. So two over here, and two right next to it, of course, which also means we can have some normal walls right in between above of the gate. And then afterwards, we actually want to raise this up with another large wall everywhere. So we want to get the right snap points and then make sure that we get this wall going from one side all the way to the other. And then we can actually bring out the ceilings here. We want to kind of build this layer all the way across from one side to the other. The same over here, of course, building this out all the way. And then most importantly, here at the very end, we want to go too wide and build it across from each other. So that's how we connect up these two layers. Then we can take out our stairs and we can actually add in a staircase right over here so we can get up and down. And of course, we want to make sure that we add or railings right along the edge of this, which also means we can add or railings right around the edge of these ceilings here, so we don't fall off of this. We want to have two more here, and these actually we want to keep open so that we can add in another staircase, and this will actually go up quite some way, almost all the way to the end here, which means it's about like 5 stairs going up. And of course, we can have the railings along the sides to make sure we don't fall off the stairs. Which of course also means we can change the skins of all these stairs, all the railings, and of course, all of the ceilings as well. Unless you want to go for a different ceiling look, of course. But yeah, at least all of these stairs and railings I would definitely do to get a little bit more of a Gothic feeling. And this gives us a little bit of infrastructure in place now to go up from all the different layers. So yeah, we want to make sure that we change all of these, and the same right over here. Now all the way back down on this layer, it's actually quite easy because of course we want to expand this towards the sides of the building. So we can bring this out all the way. Which means we can start using this layer for whatever you need it for. It's quite a decent addition to this floor for sure. So definitely gives you plenty of space for whatever you want to do here. And of course also covers up the first layer below. There we go. But that still should be tall enough to have pretty much everything in there. Yeah, so we just want to go around and making sure that this whole layer is covered from one side to the other. And again, this will give us quite a decent amount of space up here, which, I mean, you can use for more breeding, you can use for more storage, more crafting, whatever you fancy. So there we go. This is quite a big floor now. It's pretty much done now. Again, you can, of course, skin all these ceilings. And then, of course, also means that we can continue here to the sides by making sure we fill in those ceilings now that we have done everything below, so that we can focus on the next part of the building. And then finally, all the way here at the top of the stairs, we can of course add in some ceilings. We want to go all the way to the corner here and then start bringing this all the way across to the wall we just finished, and we can start kind of filling in the boundaries of this layer, because this main tower here is going to get one more floor. So we first of all want to build all the way surrounding this, and now we want to surround the stairs. We want to make sure that we leave these 2x2 open, so we go around that, and then we can fill in the remaining ceilings here. And of course, we can be sure to add some railings around this so that you don't just fall down. And of course, those railings we definitely want to change the looks of. And then we can actually raise up this tower one more layer. So again, at the very end, we want to have our behemoth gates going all the way around this building. There we go, which of course we can skin again to continue this look, and making sure that these pillars for the tower are looking really nice. You can see that's going to be the main height of the tower. It's now higher than these side buildings, and we can actually do some of these walls here at the side of this building because they're rather easy. We want to start with our large walls from right here, and we can go all the way across here on the side of the building. There we go, and then we can actually raise them up again and go across it once more. So that's the side. We want to do that again on this side of the building as well. So again, we can bring these all the way across, just like that, and then again raise them up by another large wall, which we want to make sure that goes across the side of this tower. So that's just to get the tower started a little bit. The easy walls are in place, but of course we still have plenty to do to give the rest of this building the shape that it needs. So now we'll return to these side buildings, and first of all we want to take out the walls. We want to have 4 over here and 4 over on the other side, which of course we're gonna do for all of these walls that we want to build up. And the same thing of course over here. Again, 4 over there, 4 over here, continue that, and once more, just like this. And then in between these sections we actually want to place our large wall, and we want to make sure that we can go up by 2 in total for those, which of course we want to do twice. So we actually want to do that again over here, have the large walls, raise them up again, making sure that they're about the same height as those big behemoth gateways. And again, we're going to do the same thing over here, making sure we get the right snap point, if it will let me, and then we can raise it up again. There we go. And then of course this final one over here, large walls, raise them up again. And then here at the top we want to of course make sure that these walls go across, so we'll do the same thing on the other side and continue to connect these up to the pillars there. So again over here and again over there. And then we want to shape up these windows, so we'll add our slope walls here at the very top layer to get that shape going. And of course the same thing is going to happen here on the opposite side of the building, adding in those slope walls right away. There we go, more over here to get those shapes ready. Then we can take out our railings again, and we can add them here at the bottom as well as the top here to add some details to these windows that we've just established. So we want to do the same over here. Add all those little details. And the same over at the other side here. There we go. Keep misplacing things, but yeah, we want to add them down here, add them up here, and back here at the bottom layer. And there we go. I think that should be all of them. Then we can bring out our pillars and we can have them here along the sides of our windows as well. Right here down the middle of this entire wall and on top of those window frames, just to get a few details in. And again, of course, we're going to do this for all of the different sides, so we want to make sure that we add those in along the sides of the window and all the way up in the middle of the wall. And again, we're gonna do this for all of these different sides, of course, just to get those details in there already. There we go. Same over here on the opposite side again, of course. Just like that, right above the windows and all the way up through the middle. And then we can, of course, change some of these to the Lost Colony skins, the ones next to the window, as well as these railings. That's the ones that we want to change the skins of. The rest we can leave as normal stone ones. So just these. And again, following those shapes for all of these parts. Also, of course, on the other side of the building. So we'll add these in all the way up around that. Again over here. There we go. And then finally the other side. Bring those around. Do the same over here. And there we go. And now we want to have those typical supports for Gothic builds. So we want to go to the top of this full pillar, and you want to go through the snap points until you reach this one. We want to add one against it, and we can add a few underneath it. So we're going to do this for all of these pillars connecting up to those windows we've just made. So yeah, we want to make sure that we add those in 2 layers, and again, cycling through all the different snap points until we get the right ones. And we're going to continue doing that a few times so that we get all the supports ready. And of course, this is just one part of it. We also can actually change these to be the Lost Colony ones, because I think that looks a little bit nicer. There we go. But yeah, this is just something I feel like any Gothic Cathedral build needs to have, these nice supports, and that's why we had those spikes along this side. But of course, this means we have to do it 3 more times for all of the different sides that we're working on. So we'll add it once again over here, all the snap points to get there, and making sure that we add the 2 layers. We can do the same thing again and again. So yeah, this is what you want to do for all of the sides here of the upper windows that we've just been working on. So I'll leave you to that for now, because there's going to be a lot of repetition of going through the snap points. So you want to make sure you do that for the remaining 2 sides after this. And I'll see you once you're done. And don't forget to change all of those skins. So, and there we go, we have all of those supports in place, which adds a lot of nice detail already to the build. Then we actually want to take out our quarter ceilings, and against these window frames that we've just built, we want to add them right around those corners. So we can do that for all of those 8 windows that we have just made, because then we can get started on getting the actual windows in there, of course. So we're going to do the same here, same over there, continue going all the way around. And of course, adding in the main window in the middle on all of those different platforms that we've now created. So we want to have that ceiling right in there so that we can have our windows on top. So now we can take out our greenhouse glass. We can raise up the entirety of the window like that. And again, we're going to do this for all of the windows, of course. So yeah, we're going to just keep going around, adding in those windows for all these different sides. Continue doing that over here as well. It's going to be quite a narrow room, but I found it very useful still as a fire parking spot. Or you could alternatively turn it into some bedrooms for you and your tribe mates. Whatever you need most. And one more window right over here. And then finally, of course, slope walls on the top layer here. There we go. And again, we also want to do that over on the other side here, so that we have those windows nice and ready. And then of course we want to paint the last two regions in the red color. And then for the next part, we want to have a large wall here. We want to add another one there, another one here, and another one right over there. And we can do that, of course, on both sides, just to get a little bit of structure in this room. And then we actually want to make sure that we raise this up by another large wall. There we go. So that they go all the way to the top of these wall sections. There we are. Same over here. Same over there. So we build those all the way up. And of course, we want to do the exact same over here on the opposite side. So again, we'll start out by adding in these large walls in those spots, and then again over here, same on the opposite side. And then of course we can raise them up once more here too. That one, this one, that one more here, one more there, and then finally we should get that. Then here underneath, we can actually quite simply add some stairs underneath the windows to give us still usage of the room underneath, because otherwise we don't have a lot of room left here on the inside. And this way you can easily park some flyers up there. And then all the way up here, we want to make sure to take out our roofs. We want to add them in just like that above our windows. We can of course do the same thing over on the other side here. There we go. And of course, what we've just done on one side, we also need to do on the opposite side. So again, we'll add in our roofs right here at these top layers. There we go. And then of course, switching back to the stairs, we can also add the stairs down below. There we go. For all of these sections. And then finally up here, we want to take out our slope walls. We can add them up top here. There we go. All the way around. And then of course a layer of normal walls right above that. And this is also something we need to do on the other side of the building, of course. So again, adding these slope walls into their positions. There we go. And then the full walls on top to raise this up to the proper height. And then finally, to give this even more shape, we want to, of course, add in our slope walls all the way around the edge. And we can actually bring these and meet each other in the middle. So this is kind of shaping up the roof section already. So we want to have those going across. And then finally we can have another layer of the wall going up by one more. We'll do the same thing over here on the opposite side. So we'll start, I guess, with these walls, adding those in, raising this up by one more. And then finally our slope walls again to build up the shape of the roof here of these side buildings. And there we go. One more over here. one more over there. And then finally here at the end, we want to bring those across. And then of course here on the inside up until where we have those slope walls, we want to add in some pillars so we can bring these all the way down to the ceilings. We can do the same thing on the opposite side, and that's something of course that we'll want to do for all of these sections. So we just want to make sure that we bring those pillar down as proper supports for this part of the building. It will look a lot nicer once we have them in place, especially down there where you have the ending of the wall, which otherwise looks a little bit awkward. So yeah, we want to end or add all of these pillars on all of these sections that we have just built. And of course that also means going to the opposite side of the building again and making sure that we also have all pillars here. So we're just gonna add those in again and make sure that we have them for all of those sections and not misplace any, because we definitely want to save on structures wherever we can. There we go. All the way down below, and the same over here of course. And then finally it's time to work here on the entrance to the balcony. So first off we want to add a gateway, and of course we can do that on both sides here, and then of course actually adding in the gate itself too, so that you can close it off if you don't want anything or anyone to get in there. And of course we can change those to the Lost Colony skins, same over here on the opposite side actually. And then whilst we have it, we also want to change those right next to the window as well as the roofs above the window. So we'll do the same thing over here, changing those skins. Seems like I forgot some pillars here on the inside for this window, so we want to add those in, and then of course we can change them all for those sections, change those pieces and all the way down. And actually here in between, what we could do is have those all be the Lost Colony skins, just to give them a little bit more character here on the inside. And we can do that for all of those top sections. Then we have the gates now at the very end, of course, so that you can close these off, but you can also still go in and out with most of your flyers. Right next to the door, of course, we want to have some large walls. We want to make sure that we raise up those large walls all the way to the top here. And then we actually want to start making this shape once again. The final one, we're going to flip around, of course, so that we can add those Lost Colony skins on top of there. Then up here, we want to have a temporary piece so that we can make a nice little window shape here with our greenhouse glass, of course, and then add in some slope walls right underneath that. And then we should be able to have two large walls right up there to fill in the end of the building here. So now we have a nice entrance here to that balcony and to the inside of our building. We'll of course do the same thing here over on the other side. So once again, we'll add our large walls on those corners. Right above those large walls, of course, we want to continue them once more. Then we can have our slope walls go up. The top ones, we want to flip those around. There we go. Temporary piece to add in our lovely greenhouse window, some normal slope wall pieces, and then some large walls underneath to finish this wall too. And of course, change those top ones to the Lost Colony skin. Then we can take out our roof pieces actually, and we can start laying down the entire roof for this section. It's not a very big roof, but it will help us finish off these sections that we've been working on. So we want to make sure that we fill in the roof from one side to another. Then of course we can add in some final details. We want to have a railing here going along the edge. We can of course change those railing to the Lost Colony skins, as well as the entirety of the roof over here, which we can then of course continue here on the opposite side of the building, all the way from one end to another. And then we actually want to take out some pillars here at the very end. We want to add 2 pillars, then 1, then 2, and then another one, which of course will repeat here on the opposite side. So again, 2, 1, 2, and 1. And then we can also have a final one right over there in the middle. We can have some half pillars right there, and then we can have some railings on the top of the roof, which we can of course change to the steampunk skin to get some really nice railings on there. And we want to connect that all the way up to the front, and then all the pillars of course we want to change to the Lost Colony skins. We can get started with all of these, and then on top of those we actually want to add in some thin pillars just as additional details, making them look a little bit cooler. And then of course we can change those to the Lost Colony skins once again. But you can also leave this out if you don't want to go too crazy with your structures, but you do see it looks rather nice. And then of course we want to do the same thing over here on the other side of the building. So once again, we'll take out our roofs. We'll make sure that we fill in this entire roof from one side to the end here. And of course, the other side we can't leave out either. So we want to just make sure that we fill all of this in all the way to the very end. We want to take out the pillars, 2 there, 1 here, 2 here, and another one there. We can of course also add the one right here in the middle at the very end of the roof, and then the same on the other side, 2 here, 1 here, 2 there, and 1 over here. We can take out our half pillars, add them every 2, add our railing that we can again change to the steampunk skin of course. So we want to make sure that that goes all the way across the roof. There we go. And then we also want to have the railings here on the front. The front ones, of course, we can change to the Lost Colony skins, as well as all of these pillars and all of the roof itself. So there we go. Just like this. And of course, adding some thin pillars on top of these just to add a few extra details in. And we can do the same thing over here on the end or the other end. And we can of course change all of these skins too. So there we go. And then finally the remaining thin ones until we've got this whole roof done, and it's definitely starting to look like a rather nice build, and we just need to finish the tower in the middle itself. So here at the very back, we actually want to take out the middle 2 walls, and instead of those we can add some large walls up here. We can have some other large walls coming down so the whole middle is covered, and we want to do that same thing over here at the very top. So basically going all the way from the bottom to the top are these large walls. And whilst we're working with these large walls, we also want to go around these corners, and on top of those ceilings here, we want to be sure to add in a large wall, and then we should be able to add another little wall right in between there to kind of fill in the gap. And then the final one should just be a slope wall there. So we'll do the same thing over here on the other side. A slope wall right there, a large wall right on top of it, and then a normal wall to fill in that remaining gap. And then once again, we'll do the same thing for the remaining 2 places. So slope wall, a large wall on top, and then a normal wall to fill in that gap. And then once more, of course, for this one, it's just an easy one to forget. So we want to make sure that we fill it in now, because otherwise we'll definitely will forget until we run into the wall and are like, why is there a hole there? But there we go. So now the tower should be completely covered, and we just need to get started on some windows. But first of all, here on the front, of course, we want to mirror what we did on the other side. So adding some large walls all the way up like this. So then it's time to work here at the back of the building, and we first of all want to have some beams at the bottom here, because we're going to add some more windows in here, and we want to make these about 5 high. And again, we can do the same thing, of course, for this other window, also making this 5 high, adding our slope walls on top of it, not in it. Thank you very much. And then once we have these, we can of course also add our pillars to the sides of these. We want to do that on the inside, of course, adding those pillars, and we can change those pillars at the side to the Lost Colony ones. The bottom ones will keep as stone, and we'll also be painting them. At the very top, of course, we can have our slope walls. We can have a normal wall layer and another layer above that. Same over here, and then of course that final slope wall in here. And now that we've done that, we want to have another beam going across here, and we're basically repeating the same process here. So again, we want to start building up our window, and we'll go 5 high with our greenhouse walls. Same over here on the other side of the building. Get our slopes in at the top, making sure that we have this wall going across it, having our slope walls to fill in those last remaining sections. And of course, we want to then take out our pillars, add them along the sides of the window on both sides here, and we can change those to the Lost Colony skins. There we go. And then finally, of course, the other side of the building, we also want to make a window. So we'll have our walls right there on the sides. Then we can switch to our beams, have one here and one over there. And then we can start filling in our window to be 5 high exactly. Same here on the other side. Add in our slope walls. Not in there, of course. And then finally we can fill up the rest of the wall here, going across like that, filling in the missing slope walls here. And then of course taking out all pillars to add along the sides here of the window once again, and changing those to the Lost Colony skins. And now that we've done that, we actually want to take out our roofs. We can add a roof right above this window here, this window, change it to the Lost Colony skin, of course, so that it has just a little bit more detail going on. And we can actually do that for all of those windows that we've created. So we want to do the same over here, change them to the Lost Colony skins, of course. We can do the same over on this side as well, just adding them in and changing those skins. And then finally, of course, the other side, we're going to be doing the exact same thing, adding in these windows here, as well as above all of these windows here in the middle. So again, we'll have some roofs up here, changing those skins, of course, more roofs up here on these windows. And again, the windows themselves, of course, you want to paint those last 2 regions to be red. And then finally, also this side of the building, we want to add in those roofs on the top. And with those, we've added in the final details, and we can add the roof on top of the tower. Now, of course, if you want to add a tribe tower to this base, you could just keep a flat roof and then add the tribe tower at the very end. But in other cases, we are just going to build up a roof here. So first of all, we're going to start with adding in these roofs, not all the way to the corner, but just one short. We can add another layer and then 2 more roofs over there. And we'll do this for all of the different sides. So again, we're going to fill this in across, add another one here, and then finally the final 2 up there. And again, we're going to keep this going a little while longer and adding in these for all of the different sides. It's a fairly simple roof, but it's all it really needs. And as well, we have already spent a lot of the structures on getting this build as big as it is. So finally, of course, taking out our roof corners, we want to fill those in all the way to the top and all the way around the building. So we just want to make sure that we add them in everywhere to get the tower complete. And then the final corner here, add those in all the way to the very top. And then as a little bit of an extra detail, we can definitely add in some pillars if you want, just to give it a bit more of a spike. And of course, change all of this to the Lost Colony skins to make sure that it fits in with the rest of the build. So again, we can change all of these so that it fits in with everything that we've done so far, and then you'll have a very big, but in my opinion, a really cool looking base. So yeah, we want to do the final skins over on this side all the way through. There we go, and that should give you the full cathedral build. And of course, if you haven't already started that, you want to paint everything that we didn't skin into the gunmetal for the stone walls, etc., that we used. The ceilings, etc., for the inside, I would definitely skin either to be Lost Colony, or maybe you want to go for more wooden tones inside. You can definitely do that too. And then, of course, those windows, if you haven't painted those, definitely turn them red if you want to match the Lost Colony vibes. But you can also go for different colors if you want to change the look a little bit. And with that being said, that should leave you with this beautiful cathedral. Now, if you want a full tour and a little bit more time, check out the video I already made. But a quick overview, this is what it should end up looking like. So painting all of the walls, skinning all the railings on top of the roofs to the steampunk skins, and painting those windows red is how you get this look. And I really like the look of this base. I think it's really, really cool and definitely fits the vibes of Lost Colony quite well. But you'll also find plenty of space on the inside for your breeding, for your different creatures. As you can see, plenty of spaces also along these side hallways that you can utilize for all sorts of different tames and different projects. Add some cool vibes with, of course, the Lost Colony lights and all of the new structures that are now available, as we do have a bunch of space, of course, to utilize. So you can definitely go all out with the interior here and create some really cool little reading corners, your big smelting area right here, also a teleporter for easy access. We have some bedrooms over in the corner there. We have a replicator. We have a teleporter here that was also down in the main hall so that you can teleport in and out. And as you can see on the inside, you can choose to add in some slope walls like this just to give a little bit more support and a little bit more detail on the inside. But yeah, that's how you get to the main crafting hall. Plenty of storage here, your bigger structures easily inside. Another layer of breeding for smaller creatures could also take place on this layer. And then we have the flyers parked here on the sides with the balconies on both sides of the building. A little kitchen on this layer, a tech gen that should power the whole base. And then finally, of course, we have more crafting and storage all the way at the top. And technically, if you wanted to, you could definitely add some more layers because we have a ton of space on the inside of this base. So there we go. That is how you build this Gothic cathedral, perfectly suited here for Lost Colony. So hopefully you did enjoy this build tutorial. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you again in the next video or the next stream. For now, goodbye.